On November the 11th, 2018, I suffered a hit to the head during a soccer game that would kickstart my journey with traumatic brain injury. I took a year out from school, and now 5 years later, I'm sat here ready to graduate. I've suffered from anxiety, depression, OCD, panic disorder, and I think I'm at the point where I'm ready to say that I have won the battle. There are so many people out there who face mental health challenges after being diagnosed with a TBI. Around 65% of people post-injury are diagnosed with a psychiatric disorder. But the point of this video is to address the fact that change is possible, and so is recovery. But first, we need to understand the symptoms. And we need to understand the fact that we will recover together. Brain injury is known as the invisible injury, part of the reason why it's so easily misunderstood. But there are 1.5 million Americans every single year who sustain a TBI. It has been estimated that as high as 24% of these people suffer from an anxiety disorder post-injury, 19% suffer from some form of PTSD, 9% suffer from panic disorder, and 77% experience depression. It's estimated that anywhere from 3 to 15% experience OCD, around 10% form phobia, and up to 60% experience feelings of depersonalization. So, why does this data matter? Well, if you've suffered from any of these symptoms, it should prove to you that you are not alone. And if you take one thing from this video, it should be that. I remember feeling like my situation was so unique, like I was never going to be able to suppress my symptoms. But you can suppress your symptoms. First of all, you need to understand them in order to tackle them, however. So now I'm going to be talking about the most common mental health challenges that many experience post-TBI, as well as some potential strategies that might make these symptoms feel a little less daunting. Now, anxiety is the most common mental health challenge associated with TBI. You may experience worry, distractibility, fearfulness, uneasiness, social withdrawal, or a heightened level of awareness. On top of this, the most common psychiatric disorders that might stem from this anxiety are phobia, PTSD, panic disorder, avoidant disorder, and separation anxiety disorder. OCD is also common among those who sustain a TBI, oftentimes arising as a sort of coping mechanism in order to gain a greater sense of control in a time that can be really disorganized and confusing. Depersonalization is also something you may report as a result of TBI. You may experience feeling dreamlike or as though you're kind of detached from your own person. You may find yourself saying things like, "This isn't like me," or "I can't understand myself." But this is a common fight or flight response. It's one felt by our ancestors upon seeing a dangerous animal in a forest. So it's important to note that as fear starts to dissipate from your life, so will feelings of depersonalization. Finally, depression is a common symptom of TBI. This may result from physical changes to the brain or psychosocial adjustment. The main signs of depression may be fatigue, distractibility, rumination, self-criticism, guilt, aggression, anger, irritability, tearfulness, and sadness. In all the research I've done, the most common advice for mental health recovery following TBI is to build active coping strategies. Being active and intentional is key to your recovery. Notably, individuals who are active in their recovery are said to have higher self-esteem, lower levels of depression, and lower levels of anxiety. These strategies should be focused around problem solving, activity scheduling, and goal setting. I didn't realize this for the first few months of my own recovery. I spent those months in and out of dark rooms hoping that my anxiety, depression, fatigue would just kind of fade away, but they didn't. And as concussion research has advanced, doctors are now suggesting to actually limit your time within an isolated dark environment. Instead, they now suggest that you take part in activities that will stimulate your brain without drastically increasing your symptoms. During occupational therapy, I was given the advice to scale my symptoms from 1 to 10. During an activity, let's say I was walking or reading, if at any point any of my symptoms went up by more than 2 points, that's when I'd stop. Eventually, my brain was able to handle more and more before it would see this increase. With this knowledge in mind, you're able to recover from your typical well-known concussion symptoms like light sensitivity and headache, while simultaneously planning your mental health recovery. During my own recovery, as soon as I was advised by a professional to return to sport, I would go out and play soccer by myself. At the beginning, if my light sensitivity was a 3 out of 10, and let's say my brain fog was also a 3 out of 10, if either of those symptoms would hit a 5 out of 10 at some point during the activity, that's when I asked one of my parents to come and pick me up. Over the weeks, I started to play for longer and longer, and my brain was recovering while I saw decreases in my anxiety and depression. I myself suffered from a great deal of depersonalization, and this was the number one activity that really helped with that. I was able to sort of take control of my symptoms, and I started to feel way less fear for them. Activity planning like this can be scheduling short trips to coffee shops, small interactions with friends, or being in any other sort of quiet public environments, with the eventual goal be to return to work or school. While committing yourself to activity scheduling, it's important to build coping mechanisms that work for you. A popular grounding technique for anxiety is the 5-4-3-2-1 technique, where you name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. At the same time, meditation, journaling, or podcasting music may really help to reduce anxiety in times of stress. And finally, the most scientifically backed ways of improving mental health following TBI are cognitive behavioral therapy and antidepressants. The goal of cognitive behavioral therapy is to change the way you view yourself and your environment, replacing any negative beliefs you have with positive ones. Cognitive behavioral therapy is built around 3 core principles: the beliefs create feelings, the feelings dictate behavior, and the behavior reinforces beliefs. So we can understand the aim of cognitive behavioral therapy to be uncovering any unhealthy thinking patterns that you may have. Now, regarding antidepressants, SSRIs, or selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, are the most effective for treating mental health issues relating to TBI. In particular, Zoloft and Celexa may have the fewest side effects and the ability to improve mental cognition. Seeing a GP or psychiatrist to discuss these options, or to talk about your recovery as a whole, will serve as a great first step towards better mental health after sustaining a TBI.